So we know that everything that appears in the Torah is meant to be learned and understood. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah, also the Parshas of Bereshis, but there's something in particular about Parshas Noach that we don't find anywhere else, and that is a special chiyuv to learn and understand this week's parsha, as it says in the Shira of Ha'azinu. It says, Zechor Yemois Olam, Binu Shnois Dor Vador. Remember the days of yore, understand the years of generation after generation. And the Sifri says, Zechor Yemois Olam, Hizaharu Masha Asisi B'Doras HaRishonim. Be careful and take note of what I did in the Doras HaRishonim. Masha Asisi Ba'anshei Dor HaMabul, Masha Asisi Ba'anshei Dor HaPeloga. And that's what Zechor Yemois Olam means. And Binu Shnois Dor Vador, the Sifri goes on to say, Ein Lecha Dor She'ein Boi Me'anshei Dor HaMabul V'Dor HaPeloga. That this is not something that once was, but it's something that reoccurs. And in every generation, there are Anshe Dor HaMabul and Anshe Dor HaPeloga. With some of these two things go together, that since Ein Lecha Dor She'ein Boi Me'anshei Dor HaMabul V'Anshei Dor HaPeloga, therefore it's so important that we remember and understand the history in order to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of Dor HaMabul and Dor HaPeloga. So in any case, there's a special chiyuv to learn and understand this week's parsha, the story of the Dor HaMabul and the story of the Dor HaPeloga. Now, in the end of this pasuk, it says, Sha'al avicha v'yageidcha, ask your father and he will relate to you, Zekeinecha v'yomer loch, your elders, and they will tell you. So the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chav Gimel says, Ner Chanukah, mevorchin olav asher kedushono b'mitzvayso v'tzivonu lahadlik ner Chanukah. Ve'eichon tzivonu. Where is the tzivui of lahadlik ner Chanukah? Omer Reb Yirmiyah, sha'al avicha v'yageitcha zekeinecha v'yomer loch. That from this pasuk we learn that we should obey takonos chachamim, and therefore we can say vitzivonu when it comes to hadlakas neres Chanukah, because it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. And in this pasuk, she'al avicha v'yageitcha zekenecha v'yomer loch, it says that we should be mekayim what the Rabbanan are telling us. It's kind of interesting that this chiyuv to listen to takonos chachamim was inserted into this pasuk that's talking about remembering and understanding history. Zechor Yemois Olam, Binu Shnois Dor V'Dor, Sha'al avicha v'yageitcha. Pshuta shel mikra. Avada the pasuk flows, because remember how, listen to what the elders say, and you'll understand what once happened, and you'll know what happened. But the Gemara is taking this pasuk out of context and saying that Sha'al avicha v'yageitcha zekeinecha v'yomer loch is telling us that we should be mekayim takonos chachamim. How did this chiyuv of being mekayim takonos chachamim come into this pasuk, which is talking about remembering history? And the next pasuk also says, B'hanchel el yoin goyim, ba'afridoi b'nei adam, talking about again the Dor HaPeloga, ba'afridoi b'nei adam. How did this come in here? You know, in the beginning of the parsha, it says, Eila toldois Noach, Noach ish tzadik tomim hoya b'doiroisav, Esa Elokim es halech Noach. So Noach ish tzadik tomim hoya. There are two ways to read ish tzadik tomim hoya. It could be read ish tzadik tomim hoya, that he was perfect in his righteousness, tzadik tomim hoya. Or we could say that it's Ish Tzaddik, and also he was Tamim. He was also righteous, and he was also perfect. In other words, that both words, Tzaddik and Tamim, are going back to the Ish. He was an Ish that was Tzaddik, and he was an Ish that was Tamim. Both these readings of the pasuk appear in the Rishonim. The Ramban says, Yazkir HaKosov Shehoyo Zakai V'sholeim B'tzidkoi Lohidia Shero'ui Lihinotzel Mehamabul She'ein Loi Oynish Klal Kihu Tomim B'tzedek. So the Ramban is clearly learning that Tzaddik Tomim, the Tomim is explaining how much of a tzaddik he was. He was a tzaddik Tomim. But the Ibn Ezra says, Ish tzaddik b'maisov, Tomim b'liboy, which means that tzaddik and Tomim are two different things. He was righteous in his maisim, and he was perfect in his heart. So both are going back to the Ish. Now, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Avava Med Aleph, L'chatchila wanted to read this pasuk to mean that Tomim means that he wasn't a treifa or a mechusar aver. He was physically perfect. The Gemara is doiche. The Gemara says Dilma Tomim bidrochov tzaddik b'maisov. But we see both in the Havamina and in the Maskon of the Gemara that we're learning that the Tomim refers to the Ish. It's not referring to the tzaddik, how righteous he was, but that the man was a tzaddik and the man was a Tomim. First, the Gemara thought it's saying that he wasn't a Balmum, and then the Gemara says that it means that he was Tomim. He was Tomim b'drochov and he was tzaddik b'maisav, and that's the way the Ibn Ezra learns that tzaddik and Tomim are two different definitions of the ish. And maybe it's mamish the same because, what does it mean, bidrochov? The way is before you get to the destination. So really it's the leiv, which is the drochov. So when the Gemara says that he was Tomim bidrochov, it actually might mean the same as when the Ibn Ezra says that he was Tomim beliboy. Not only in his actual maisim was he a tzaddik, but he was Tomim beliboy, and that's the Tomim bidrochov that the Gemara says. But it's interesting that Rashi, how does Rashi read this Gemara? Rashi says, Tomim bidrochov, onov ushval ruach. That Tomim bidrochov means that he was humble. And what is tzaddik b'maisov, zokt Rashi, beloy chamos? He didn't steal. Now, where did Rashi get this from? I mean, the Torah is very broad. I mean, the Tomim, the Drochov, Tzadik, B'maisov can be referring to all kinds of things. From where did Rashi know that Tomim B'drochov is an Onov, Ushval Ruach? This character trait is expressed in Tomim B'drochov, and that Tzadik B'maisov means Beloy Chamos. So it would seem that the pshat is like this. The pasuk says that Noach was a ish tzaddik tomim hoyo b'doy roisav. Now, both according to the Dershim l'shevach and according to the Dershim l'gnai, we see that he's being contrasted to the doy roisav. You could say that only in his generations was he considered a tzaddik. Would he be in Avram's generation? He wouldn't be. You could say that even b'doyrosav he was a tzaddik. Kolshkin that b'doyros shel Avram he would be a tzaddik. But we're comparing him to we're contrasting him to his generation. Now it says over here b'doyrosav in his generations, meaning that Noach lived in two generations. And in the Tanchuma it says, Reb Yehuda and Reb Nechemya, they say, Tomim hoya b'dor hamabul u b'dor hapalogo. So the b'doyrosav is talking about the two generations that he lived, the dor hamabul and the dor hapalogo. And in both these eras, he was a tzaddik, Tomim. So Lefize it could be that the dor hamabul, their ikechet was kimola haaretz chamos mipneihem. Chamos is robbery. The Dorha, when we say that Noach was different, he wasn't like his generation, and we're saying that he was a tzaddik b'maisav, Rashi says, b'loy chamos, because he's being contrasted to the Dor HaMabul. And the Iker Indian of the Dor HaMabul is Chomos. The Dor HaPeloga, their chait was Gaiva, L'chora. It says, V'nase lonu shame. And therefore, when we're contrasting him with the Dor HaPeloga, we're saying that he was Onov, Ushval Ruach. And that's why it's Tzaddik, Tomim, B'doi Roisov. He was Tzaddik Klape one generation, and he was Tamim Klape the other generation. Now, you know, the Gemara says, in Chulin, Daf Kuf Lametes, Moshe min ha-Torah minayin. Where is there a remez in the Torah for Moshe? Now, yeah, why are we looking for a remez? I mean, Moshe appears in the Torah all over the place. But the Gemara, as Rashi says, where is Moshe alluded to in the Torah before he came into being? So the Gemara says, Moshe min ha-Torah minayin, b'shegam hu basar. In last week's parsha, b'shegam b'gematria Moshe. So it's interesting that Moshe's name is alluded to in the Parshas HaMabul, b'shegam hu basar, which is in the end of Parshas Bereshis, where we say that the Dor HaMabul was mekulkul. So, you know, in the Zohar, in Parshas Pinchas, it says, V'oid ukmuha rabbanon, the osid have a Moshe lekabel oiraise bedora the toifona. That it was meant to be that Moshe Rabbeinu would receive the Torah in the Dor HaMabul. That's what was meant to be. Elo begin the havoy rishi'ayo, since the people were rishoy. Therefore, the Torah was not given in that time. Hadohu diksiv, says the Zohar. That's why it says, B'shegam hu basar, b'shegam b'gematria Moshe. So the pshat is Moshe Taka belongs here, because Moshe should have been in the Dor HaMabul. He should have received the Torah in the Dor HaMabul. It's just that the Dor HaMabul was mekalkal, and therefore it didn't happen. But therefore he's alluded to in the Dor HaMabul. But this means, l'chara, that there's something about the Dor HaMabul that makes them rohui for Kabbalas HaTorah, but somehow things went the wrong way. But there was a potential in the Dor HaMabul for Kabbalas HaTorah. What does that mean? On the other hand, we see that the kilkul of the Dor HaPeloga happened in Eretz Shinar, which is Bavel. And that's where later the Iker revelation of Torah Shebal Peh took place. And since we know that Kol HaGodol Mechaveiroi Yitzroi Godol Hemenu, and that's not just in general terms, but in the particular area that a person's mission is to excel, that's where his Yetzer Hara stands up against him with more force. Kol hagodol mechaveiroi yitzroi godol hemenu. So we could assume that what happened in the Dor HaMabul is the antithesis to what's needed for Kabbalas HaTorah. In other words, that's what killed the potential of the Dor HaMabul, that was meant to be Mekabel Torah Shebechsav Al Yidei Moshe Rabbeinu, and the kilkul of the Dor HaPeloga, where eventually Torah Shebal Peh was revealed, was a kilkul that was the antithesis to the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh. And so Bemis writes Reb Tzadok in a very short line in the Likutei Ma'amorim, where he's talking about the Gemara in Gittin that says, Ein Adam Oimed al Divrei Torah, Ela im Kein Nichshal Bahem, Diksiva Hamachshelo Tachas Yodecha. Reb Tzadok says, Hamachshelo, the Torah Shebal Peh, Hu Dor HaPeloga, Shehoya Be'eretz Shinar, Sheshom Yesoid Torah Shebal Peh. So he's clearly saying that the Yitzroi Godel that there was in Bavel that brought about the Dor HaPeloga is mechoven keneged the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh, which eventually happened in Eretz Bavel. So how do we understand this? So there are two roots for all chatoim. One is that a person feels shiftless, katnus. He feels inadequate. He feels unworthy. He feels that he's a nobody. He doesn't understand his greatness. He doesn't understand how significant he is. He doesn't understand that every thought, every talk, every deed of his carries weight. He takes himself lightly. He doesn't understand his significance and his importance. Ma Yisrael, in other words, he sees himself as Moiser Adam and a Behema Ayin. On the other hand, and when a person feels that way, I mean, he has no interest in doing mitzvahs and staying away from averos. On the other hand, sometimes a person feels has an exaggerated sense of self. He has a sense of gaiva and gavus alev, as if he doesn't need to be governed by any rules. He's above it. So a person can feel beneath it, he can feel above it. And perhaps the Gemara says in Brachas Daf Yud Zayin, Rebbe Alexandri Bosor de Matzli, in the end of his Shmoneh Esrei, he used to say, Omar Hochi, Ribono Olam, Goli v'yodu alefanecha, she'ritzoneinu lasos ritzonecha. Our inner will is really to do your will. Umi ma'akev. So what's holding us back from realizing that? Se'or she'be'isa v'shibud malchus. The yeast in the dough and the shibud of malchus. Says the Maharsha, hakavona b'zeh k'mo shekosav Rambam b'shmoine prokim sheyesh lo adam leilach b'midoisav u'b'drochav b'derech hamitzua, that a person should take the middle road. V'hinei hayetzo hara mesis sheyelech adam b'kotzeh ha'echad b'mutaloi k'goyin le'his goys v'chulei. V'alkein medamalei l'se'or shebe'isa shemagbia ha'isa v'oisa oisa yoise mik'moisha oisa. So that's the challenge of Se'or Shebe'isa that holds us back from being Mekayim, the Ritzoneinu Lasis Ritzonecha. We feel too great. We have a hisnasus, like the yeast makes the dough rise. V'ahepech shibud malchis. Akum. Machrichim lekotza hasheni. She'em manichim leYisrael is goy. So the mashpilin oisim etzachas hashiflos. The shibud malchis makes us feel small, insignificant, inadequate. And Mamela, that pushes us away from the Ritzoneinu, Lasois Ritzonecha. Now it would seem that Gezel and Arayas, their shirish is in shiftless. When a person doesn't realize the Moisar Ha'adam in Abahema, he feels that he's nothing more than a beast. So then, Avada, there's no rules of Gezel v'Arayas. Often that the Shirish HaKilkul of the Dor HaMabul is the feeling of shiftlus. That's what brings Chamos. I don't respect boundaries because I'm just Moisei Adam and a Behema Oyin. The Chet of the Anshe Dor HaPeloga is about Gaiva and Gavos Ruach. V'nasa lanu Shem. So that's the challenge of Se'or Shebe'isa. And it could be that that's why the Chet of the Dor HaPeloga happened in the place where Eretz Shinar, Rashi says, Sheninaru Meisei Mabul Ubou L'Sham, that the Meisei Mabul landed in Eretz Shinar. So really, the Dor HaPeloga was a reaction to the Dor HaMabul. In other words, after seeing how humanity sunk to such a low level, I mean, I don't mean a pun, but they sunk to such a low level that they consider themselves Moiser Adam and Abahema Oyin. The Anshe Dor HaPeloga actually wanted to correct that sin, but they went in the opposite direction. V'nasa lanu Shem, but they exaggerated in terms of how significant and how important one should feel, and therefore they they went to the other kotze and they missed the, not the boat, because the boat was already, but they missed the what they were supposed to do. And the truth of the matter is that a person needs to have both these midas of gavos haruach and shiflos haruach in the right shir, in the right measure. The kilkel is when you take things too far to one of the tzavos, like the Rambam says. So now, for Torah shebiksav, for accepting Torah shebiksav, we need to have hachna and bittul, to be mekabel and mekayim b'dvar Hashem. Understand that we don't understand everything, and we need to get instructions. That is what allows us to accept Torah shebechsav. And that's why Bemis, the Torah was Rosh Tinosin al Yidei Moshe Rabbeinu in the Dor HaMabul, because the Dor HaMabul was a time of shiflus haruach, of anava, they felt how insignificant man is. And that's what you need in order to be mekabel Torah shebechsav. But they exaggerated in terms of how insignificant they felt and how unimportant they felt, and Mamela they imol haaretz chamas mipneihem, and therefore the Torah was actually not given in the Dor HaMabul, that they did Maaseh Behema and they were nekam and oil. That's the Yitzroi Godel that stands against the Godel Mechaveroi in terms of being Roy for the Kabbalah of Torah Shebe Chsav. On the other hand, for Torah Shebal Peh, the Gemara says in Sotah Daf Hey that a Talmud Chacham has to have at least a shminis, or maybe at most, a shminis Shebe Shminis of Gaiva. I mean, like the learners of Torah Shebal Peh have to weigh every idea with their own minds and add and subtract and accept ideas and unaccept ideas. And to the point that even HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the Gemara says in Bava Metzia, Daf Nun Tes, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Nitzchuni Bonai Nitzchuni, meaning that it's like, sounds very much like what the Dor HaPalaga was trying to do. Yeah, they were trying, Rashi says, they were trying to argue and against the Rebbeinu Shalom. In Torah Shebal Peh, there's some of that. So the Anshe Dor HaPalaga, which was an Eretz Shinar, which was a reaction to the Chet of the Dor HaMabul, and was in the place of Mokem Sheninaru Meisei Mabul Ubo L'Sham, that was the place that was roy for the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh, because they had a sense of self, which the Talmidei Chachamim that learn in Torah Shebal Peh have to have, but they took it too far once again, and therefore the Torah Shebal Peh was not revealed in Eretz Babel until many generations later. So the mission of man is to know how to use both these midas in the proper measure, and that's Noach. Ish tzaddik tomim hoya b'doiroi sof, in his generations. He was a tzaddik b'maisov l'loi chamos. Yeah, his spirit didn't sink into shiflus or ruach of the Dor HaMabul. And on the other hand, he was tamim b'drachov. He was an onav ushval ruach. In the Dor HaPalaga, that was a chet of gavos ruach. Over there, he was an onav ushval ruach. And that's the Zchor Yemois Olam, Binu Shnois Dor Vador, the Dor HaMabul and the Dor HaPalaga. By remembering the past, remembering what happened to them, we'll recognize the importance of using both these midas together, with the right measure. And Memela will come to a point of Sha'al Avicha, V'yageitcha, Zekeinecha, V'yoimrulach. In the Sifri it says, Sha'al Avicha V'yageitcha Elu Nevim, Zekeinecha V'yoimrulach, Elu Chachamim. So what's the pshat? Nevi'im, that represents instructions from above, without humans playing any role. That's the Indian of Torah Shebechsav. So Sha'ala Vicha v'Yageitcha Zekenecha v'Yoimru Loch Sha'ala Vicha v'Yageitcha Elu Neviim Zekenecha v'Yoimru Loch Elu Chachamim. So for the acceptance of Torah Shebechsav, we need to be subservient. We need to have a sense of shiflus, and Memela that we will remember that we will be zoichet to by remembering the chait of the Dor HaPelaga. And what happened to the Dor HaPelaga, who lacked shiflus haruach, and we'll understand the importance of shiflus haruach, and therefore will make ourselves available to hearing the divrei hanavim. On the other hand, by remembering the Dor HaMabul, which the chait was Molahar Etzkamos, the chait was Shiflus Haruach, we'll remember the importance of Gavus Haruach, Vayigba, Liboy, Bedarkei Hashem, and Memela will have the ability to be the Kenecha V'Yomelach Elu Chachamim, because Torah Shebal Peh requires a Shminis Shebeshminis of Gaiva in order that we should be able to reveal the Dvar Hashem through our minds. Okay, Rabbi Say,